everybody, and welcome to episode 18 of Run to the Hills. Morning, John. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I thought I'd have a background of the spine this weekend. So this is this is Hadrian's Wall behind me. This week I did one of your hill sessions. I've been doing your power hour sessions. So this was number 4 that I've done. And it was the hill pyramid. So I've got Gleneford Braes not too far away. So I did about 1.5 miles warm up to get to the hill. And then it was 20 seconds up and then jog down, 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 50, 60, and then back down. And then I did a little sort of 3 or 4 minutes recovery run. And then I did it all again. And it was great. It was funny, though, because there was a few people out walking their dogs and you keep running past them and then jogging back down and then running past them again.
What sort of effort did you do the hill up? Were you like sort of running strong, running fast?
What I tried to do was, I would say 80%. And I was breathing hard. I was definitely pushing it. And it was quite good because there's different markers. So I always count my breaths. So at 5 breaths, I was this point. At 10 breaths, I was somewhere else. And I just tried to make sure I was keeping the same pace. So I'd like to think I ran a similar pace for most of it. And then as I came down the ladder, as it were, the last 30 and the last 20, I did try to put a little bit more effort in. But I found it really helpful. It was a good little session.
It makes it go quite quickly too, doesn't it? Did you like going up the pyramid? Because sometimes I don't like that. Sometimes I just like a descending hill effort. You know, you start with like a 3 minute and then you work all the way down. But sometimes going up and down, it means you warm up as well. So
no, it was good. Yeah. And it was again, quite different. So I think some of the sessions that you've set for us on that power hour have been things which I've not done before. And when I think I've been running for however long I've been running, you know, I've just enjoyed it, having a bit of variety.
I always say to clients, my sessions, the only limit is your imagination with sessions. And often I get comments like, where did you think that one up from, Eddie? Because, you know, if you're writing loads and loads of plans, I love often I give myself, you know, when you're writing school reports and when I taught in big schools and because you're a PE teacher, you teach everybody, and sometimes we taught them like 4 different sports and we'd have 1,000 kids and they all wanted a report. So I used to set myself like a theme for each report. So it'd be like, okay, racing cars. So I had to write like the speed she takes the bend at, you know, that sort of thing. And so often I give myself a theme with the training plans and everybody gets like their session a bit different. But it's got a little bit, maybe like a pyramid, you know, or everyone gets a progressive run or something like that, especially in the winter to mix it up. So I love thinking of different sessions and then thinking, as I press send.
Yeah. And this, obviously, this episode is all about coaching and a question and answer. And later on, we're going to talk about the interview that I did with you and Dave Troman. So there's some great advice on there. But I just want to really thank you for those sessions. It's really added into my my speed sessions. And I've got my.
And did you do a club session as well this week?
Yeah, I did a club session on Monday. So that was 3 by 1, 3 by 2, 3 by 3, 3 by 4.
That's not a great imaginative set, is it? That one, someone's got. So you're going up. You were going up the. Did you run slower as you went? Longer on the rep. Or?
Yeah.
Was that the aim?
Yes, the aim. But also, we normally run around the trim trail, around the park run course at Linwood Leisure Centre. But it was so icy. We did the warm up when we were slipping and sliding. So we decided to run to the industrial estate. And there's a road which in Linwood, which goes past the dump. And basically we ran up and down this road. It must have been about 20 times because it took about a minute of hard running to run from one end to the other. So when we did the 4-minute rep, we run up and down the road 4 times and then multiplied that by 3. So we were just, and there's one house and this guy was looking out the window and there was all these there's about 11 of us, 12 of us, and we kept running past his house. So it was,
runners, winter running.
But we got it done. Yeah.
Well done for doing it.
I want to find out, because at the end of last episode, you were saying that you had some testing you were going to do. So tell us how it went this week.
Oh, yes. So what? Oh gosh, my brain is frazzled. So I had to do two different tests. I did an incline treadmill run. I had to do them both on the treadmill because we are deep in snow here, and so there's no speed out there anymore. So I had two different tests to do because, as I've said before, I am going to spend the winter doing a lot more cross training. I've always carried on with quite a strong running element throughout the winter as well as skiing. But this winter, I'm going to really push the running down to like 4 or 5 runs a week, which I know still sounds a lot, but with just maybe 1 or 2 quality runs and a couple of easy sort of dog runs. And then all my sort of big volume of training I'm going to do on the skis and a little bit on my bike. So I wanted to see my heart rate zones so that I could sort of cross them across the sport and see where I was. So I did an uphill treadmill run, which was starting at 6 kilometers an hour and at 10%, and you put it up 1 kilometer an hour every 5 minutes, and you ran until you fell off the back. That was really fun. I'm not so good at those because there's no ending. You just got to keep running. I don't like those tests. And then the other one was a progressive run where you just did 10 minutes really easy, 10 minutes easy, 10 minutes steady, 10 minutes a little bit more steady, and then 10 minutes sort of really strong tempo. I enjoyed that. That's my sort of run, and it had an ending. So you sort of were working towards something other than the uphill, but I got some good heart rate feedback. And this week I've been doing, really concentrating on when I'm on my skis or on my bike, keeping that heart rate in the appropriate training zone, because you know what I'm like a bit, John. I get very excited about everything and I can't control myself. And so everything ends up being a little bit frantic and probably a little bit too hard, because I'm like, yeah, I'll meet you for a ski. Yeah, I'll do this. And then I end up really tired. And then when it gets to the key sessions, I'm like, oh, I'm a bit tired. I can't go as fast as I want. So I'm really I'm trying to be really mature about my training. And this week I've done a lot of skiing, which has been brilliant. We still, there's still no lifts opening, so there's no actual skiing. But we can randonnée, which is like ski touring. So you put skins, which is basically like sticky felt on the bottom of your ski. You have special skis which are lighter than normal skis and a special binding, and you can walk or run uphill with your poles, and you have backpack on with all your kit and your avalanche kit, and then you go as high as you want. You got to remember, you got to ski down. So, and then you get to the top, quick snack, quick cheer charge bar. Ate one of those massive ones at the top yesterday. I was that hungry. And then you take the skins, rip the skins off the bottom of your skis. You change your binding, click in, put a coat on, gloves, because you get so hot going up. So yesterday it was beautiful. There was like -10 when we started. We were in like just one base layer. We got that hot. And then when you get to the top, you have to quickly because you get cold really, really quickly. 2 coats on, helmet on, and you ski down. It took us about an hour and a half to get to the top yesterday, and about 8 minutes to get down. It's always a bit disappointing because the ski down's the best bit. But I'm really enjoying doing a bit of cross training and knowing that it's good for my fitness. Whereas I've always just done the cross training as extra, now it's actually part of the program. So I feel that I'm hopefully going to come out of this winter stronger athletes.
It's going to be really interesting following your progress over the winter then, because we'll be able to see how it compares and how it works. So I'm sure people will appreciate listening to that and hearing your stories. I think
it's really good as well for because I got some big mountain races next year, for the technical skills in the mountain as well. I'm feeling like not, with the skiing and with this, even with the going up, you're having to traverse across stuff that you're having to think about where you're putting your skis, and it's all like your sort of peripheral vision. And then, as we talk about in the podcast, whether it's this week or when we air the next few questions about the downhill, when you're skiing downhill really fast and you're looking ahead, it's just all good skill set for mountain running as well. So yeah, I'll keep you posted on my skiing adventures.
Okay, let's just move to a heads up. Yesterday, I interviewed Mike Churchyard for our live interviews. We've been trying to do a monthly live interview on our YouTube channel, and I spoke to Mike last night, and I'll put the link on the show notes if you missed that or you'd like to listen to it. But Mike did the spine race in 2020 in January this year, and finished with about 8 hours to go. So he's at the back of the field, but it was a great interview. I really enjoyed chatting to him. We had some great questions from beforehand and also live during the interview. So if you're interested in the spine, then I would certainly recommend listening to that. I enjoyed chatting to Mike. And we've got the next of our countdown to the spine with Stephen Brown. I'll be interviewing him over the weekend, and that will go out on Sunday. And each week we try and talk about how his training's going. And also we have a key subject. And this week he's going to talk about his mental strategies. And that was something I spoke with Mike about last night as well, because I think, Mike was saying that he is not the fastest runner, but he got the mental side really dialed in, his checkpoint strategy and how positive he was and various things. So that was quite helpful. And Stephen also, I would put in a similar camp. He really gets the mental side well. So really looking forward to chatting to him and seeing what he's got to say with that. Okay, so let's move on to our competition.
So we're keeping our competition open. We've got one more. Well, no, actually, we've got till 14th, haven't we? 3 days. 3 days. Now, John, I was thinking when I was running in the snow, as you do, your great thoughts come to you. I think I was even listening to us on the podcast because it's so good. I can't get enough of it. I was thinking perhaps, I don't know what you're going to say about this, but perhaps we should let people enter themselves, because it's been a bit of a tricky year in that people haven't been running with their mates and sort of going for group runs, have they, and talking about, and perhaps you've been listening to the podcast and, I mean, shock horror, not sharing it with your mates and not talking about it. But so I had a thought that maybe we should let people, if they have something entered next year, or if they were interested in some coaching, apply for a place themselves through the same competition entry system. So they need to go on the Churchyard website and fill in a form, but perhaps we should let people enter themselves. You can still nominate a mate. Absolutely. We encourage that, but I kind of thought maybe that's a good idea. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that'd be helpful actually, because as you said, I think a lot of times when we're running with people, we see them, don't we? Whereas it was interesting when I was chatting to someone about coaching. I think that was Dave. We were chatting about some of his clients, and he was saying that one of the things that some of his athletes love is the fact that they have someone like Dave, and I'm sure your clients are the same with you, someone to talk about running with. Because if you're with a partner who doesn't like running, or you haven't got friends at work who like running, then sometimes you haven't got that contact, have you? So yeah,
no, absolutely.
I think that would be great. And if I think the prize is, I know we've done it, but I think it's a really good prize. I think 3 months of coaching from you, that I don't know how much you would charge, but that would be a fair amount.
Thousands, John.
Right. And I think,
that's really kind, John. And I think as well, like you said, it's about, like, lots of my runners just love chatting with me about it. I know my husband likes me talking to them because he's like, I don't want to hear about any of you running anymore. So that's kind of where I got to the point, because I thought, I wonder how many people are listening to this. Like, I'd really love some coaching or some advice, but I feel a bit awkward maybe asking a mate to then nominate me. And we're all about inclusivity. Is that a word? Inclusivity in this podcast. So we thought, let's open it up to let's do that. Let's open it up to anybody who wants to who basically wants to talk to me for 3 months. It'll save you half an hour of chat, John.
Yeah. Well, to be fair as well, that part of the prize is that I will interview them monthly as well.
Yeah, sorry about that, everybody.
No,
You have to have a chat with you.
Yeah, but I think it's it'll be a nice record of their journey, to have a monthly interview. And then I say, if it's a race that I can go to, I'd love to go along and video them during the race as well. So if you would like to nominate yourself for Christmas and give yourself a Christmas present, then we'll put a link on the show notes, and we'll put something on our Facebook page as well tomorrow to encourage people to do that. And you've got until Monday to get those in. So let's get a few more entries from people who would like to nominate themselves. Okay, let's move on to our interview. So this week we had a great chat on Tuesday with yourself, Eddie, and with Dave Troman. And so maybe you'd like just to sort of just give a little heads up about what's to come in this interview.
A lot of talking. So we asked for questions on Facebook, and we tried our best to answer. I think maybe we tried too hard in some cases. We gave tried to give as much of our experience and information about all the questions that you asked. I really hope it's useful. We were trying to give as much information. So sometimes when I listen to it, sometimes it does. There's a lot coming out. So take your time listening to it. You might like to listen to it twice, and hopefully there's something for everybody in there. And if there's something that perhaps you're like, oh, she mentioned that, or Dave mentioned that, and I'd like to know a little bit more about that, then just put a comment on Facebook and we can have a little chat, or I can go into stuff into more detail if you have more questions. Because as we said quite often through the interview, we could talk about this. As everybody can, running. We could talk about this all day. So, but as ever, Dave was great and was such a wealth of knowledge, both in coaching and in his own running. And he brings a sense of humor, which we love. So hope you enjoy the interview.
Yeah. So it lasts about 40 minutes, and apologies to a couple of questions that we recorded, but the podcast was going to be too long. So
that's enough of Eddie and Dave.
Yeah.
That's enough. 40 minutes.
So we will put those out on another episode. We will fit those in at some point, because they were great questions as well. So I hope you enjoy this. And as Eddie said, you may want to listen to it a couple of times and take notes even. But it's some great advice there. And I really enjoyed listening to your answers. Okay, it's great to welcome Dave Troman back to our coaching, I think we'll call it a coaching clinic or coaching corner or something. Anyway, it's great to have you with us, Dave. And obviously we've got our...
Looking forward to it.
Yep. And we've got our co-host, Eddie. So now this time we thought, instead of me thinking some questions, well, in fact, I think it was you asking the questions, thought them, and I just asked them. But we've asked our audience for some questions. So we've got some great questions for the pair of you. And then we'll see how we get on with these. And I'm going to take turns on who I ask. But obviously, if the other one wants to chip in, then that's fine as well. So we'll start with you, Eddie. And we've got a couple of questions that link together. And then from Ashley Kaufman, who said, would love some advice on strength and conditioning. What kind of stuff to do? HIIT training, weights, body weight, amount of reps. What should a typical strength and conditioning session look like, and how often? And Mark Dennis, also similar question, information on how best to periodize strength and conditioning from the off season to the running season would be great.
It's like my whole degree in 2 questions. Well, we could do a whole podcast on strength and conditioning. And it was funny that the majority of our questions were based on this. And this is a big thing lots of people ask. And people, funnily enough, only get interested in strength and conditioning as they get older or when they get injured. When we're in our 20s, it's easy. So I'm going to keep the answer quite simple, because we could go into a lot of detail. So I think Dave and I both, we're going to answer as much as we can, but we'll keep it quite simple. If you want to talk more, send me a message, and then probably the same with Dave as well, or look into it yourself. Hopefully we're going to spread some little nuggets that will encourage you to perhaps do a little bit more reading about this topic. So the first thing, if you're looking into strength and conditioning and you don't have a clue what to do, I would recommend the first thing you want to do is work out what you want to work on. So why do we do strength and conditioning? Well, majority of us do it because we don't want to get injured, and we want to get faster and more powerful, and we want to be consistent in our training. So have a little look at that. This time of year, when you ask about periodization, is the perfect time of year to to sit back and try something new, because I guarantee if you pick up any sort of weight, do any sort of new class, any sort of new exercise, the next day you're going to feel it. So you don't want to be right in the middle of a marathon training build up 3 weeks before your A race and go, I'm going to do some deadlifts. Okay, really now is a perfect time if you want to add strength and conditioning into your program. But what does strength and conditioning look like? Majority of us have not had a great deal of experience of going into the gym. You know, when we think of the gym, we think of the big weights, big muscle, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so strength conditioning can encompass all sorts of different things. The most important thing is to find something that you like doing, because if going to the gym is really hard to fit into your life, it's a little bit intimidating, perhaps it's expensive, gyms aren't even open at the moment, it's another thing to add onto your routine, you're not going to keep doing it. Okay, so find something that perhaps you are interested in and is easy to do. Strength and conditioning doesn't have to be about lifting heavy weights. Lifting heavy weights does have a place in the program, but it might not be the thing for you at the moment. So have a think about something that you'll be really interested in. For me, I really like doing Pilates. I find that it really, it adds to my running. I can do it throughout the year. It works different muscles. It works on my weaknesses, and it takes away the focus of my quads and hamstrings and glutes and makes me focus on my core. So strength and conditioning doesn't have to be about lifting heavy weights. It can be kettlebells. So you can jump on Amazon, maybe not at the moment. I think a lot of them have sold out, but you can have a look at different kettlebell routines. There's heaps of them on YouTube. You can add that into your program. You can add that in right now. Start very gently, mix it up with different things. So strength and conditioning doesn't have to be about lifting weights, but lifting heavy weights is the perfect way to get faster, get more powerful, maintain good form. But there's lots of coaches out there, and I think Dave would probably agree with me, which encourage you to do this, but you need to be able to do it properly. So yes, now is the time to put some heavy weights, to try lifting heavy weights once gyms reopen. But I would encourage you, if you're thinking of adding weights into your program and you're not sure what to do, to engage the help of a professional. Because even when I go to the gym now and I do things like deadlifts and heavy squats, I have a mate who will help me, because you often don't know what you're doing. You can feel that you're in the right position, but you're actually not. And you can end up either not doing the exercise properly and it's a bit of a waste of time, or you can injure yourself. So I wanted to sort of get the point across that strength and conditioning doesn't have to be about going to a gym. It has to be something that fits into your life and something that you like doing. Alongside the strength and conditioning, there needs to be also things that you do regularly. You need to always be doing throughout the year. So instead of thinking about periodization, throughout the year, your core work. So by core, I don't just mean your abs, like you're at your six-pack, John. I mean like all your upper body strength and your spine. So you can do this body weight, and for all my athletes, Dave, you're probably the same. I write a quick core session, which we incorporate into a lot of the recovery sessions or easy runs. They do a recovery session, they do an easy run, they come home, 15, 20 minutes, body weight exercises, nothing too taxing. You can do it in front of the TV, you can do it while the kettle boils, but just remind those muscles how to work. Really works on those little weaknesses, because you know, you go shoulder bridge, one leg lift, and you go, oh my God, I'm really weak on that side. Okay, I really need to work on that. Add that in, it all adds up. You do that a couple of times a week, and you'll suddenly find over a 12-week cycle, you've done 3 to 4 hours of core work without really even noticing it in your plan. So core work, stretching, whatever that looks like to you. Again, everybody has a different opinion, but anything that feels tight, a little bit of stretching, always working on your feet. Rolling feet. If you've got a spiky ball, golf ball, cold can of Coke, oh my God, that feels so good after a long run. In the evening, always working on your feet, on your flexibility, on stretching them out, and then finally on your stability. So if you've got a wobble board or Bosu ball, or even you can just stand on the edge of a step, okay, and close your eyes. and balance on one foot, close your eyes, balance on the other foot, working on those proprioceptors, always trying to improve that, especially if you're a trail runner, and you perhaps go over on your ankle a lot. So all those sort of little things you keep in your program all your time. You do them every single week. Those are consistent. Those are things that are always in your strength and conditioning program. And then the things like weightlifting, the things like kettlebells, other stuff like that, they can sort of flow in and out depending on where you are in your cycle. So if you're looking into getting into some strength and conditioning, I would say now, December, now is the time to have a little look, maybe have a look at gyms around you. I know gyms do sort of like some programs for beginners. See if you've got any mates. Maybe some mates have got gyms at home. So yeah, have a go and see what difference it makes your runners. I've never had a client that's added any core strength work to their program gone, oh yeah, it hasn't really helped. Always they come away going, oh my gosh, I feel stronger. I feel I can engage those muscles. So that was me talking very quickly.
Also, we had a question from Deborah Bourne, and she said, how do you make strength training less boring? Can you split it up during the day? Example, all the reps in one move each time you're waiting for the kettle to boil. Or if you can't do the recommended amount, how do you work up to it? Start with the fewer reps. So some thoughts on how you can make it less boring.
Well, first of all, I'd back up totally what Eddie said about chipping away all the time. So my athletes I send them little videos and saying, these are your core drills for this week, demonstrated with on my lovely patio out the back there. So we're doing that, but to make it more likely that an athlete is going to do it, you've got to be accountable. So even though most runners go, well, basically my heart rate's not out through the roof, I'm not sweating buckets, therefore it's not training, and you've got to throw that out the window. And what you need to do is I'll get all my athletes, I say to them, I want you to record when you do your core training, when you do your balance training, all of that, you have to record it on your watch. So it then gets dragged through to me and I can see it on their training plan with a little green dot next to it, meaning they've done it. And then I can look at the data if I want. But if there's a degree of accountability, that's a good thing. Even if somebody's not being coached, a lot of runners will either have their online training diary, or they'll be old school and they'll still have their paper training diary, but it should all be written in. So training isn't about going running. Training is about doing everything that makes you a better runner. So once they can make that switch, then you can kind of see the point in doing it. You don't want to be doing it just because you think, well, everybody says I should do it, so I'll do it. You've got to do it because you believe it's going to make a difference to you. And I think that's a big, important switch that an athlete needs to make. And I jot down a few, how are you going to make it more enjoyable? How are you going to make it more likely you're going to do it? So after the accountability, you've always got loads and loads of dead time in the day when you've got 5 minutes here, you've got 10 minutes there, you're watching the news in the evenings, you've got half an hour there. So why aren't you doing it then? You know, we've got dead time. We could be doing it then. Well, I do my core work sitting in front of the telly.
I'm doing it right now. You can't see I'm actually in a permanent squat.
just below the waist only though. And things like, I mean, now there's also, we're all becoming a lot easier at using Zoom, aren't we, Eddie? And and why not arrange to meet up on Zoom with some friends, so that, you know, even if you haven't got the time to go somewhere to meet up and do it, or go to a gym to do it, meet up and say, right, every Tuesday night and every Thursday night, we're going to meet up on Zoom at this time and we're going to do our session together. Somebody's got the music on, and you do something like that, just so you make it something that's in the training diary, it's in the plan. I'm making a commitment because I've got friends that I'm going to do it with, therefore I'm more likely to do it. Another one of my little favorites is, and I get on YouTube and I find videos of people who have done the races that I'm going to do later that year. So I'll actually just watch a video, so I'm kind of motivated and thinking about the race while I'm doing it, and that kind of keeps me ticking over and keeps me going towards it. Yeah.
I think as well as if you, when you're planning your strength and conditioning, if you focus on what you need for your race and you're doing exercises that are going to make you stronger for that race, like if your CCC or UTMB is in your head for next year, or you missed it out this year, you know you're going to need quad strength, you're going to need glute strength. if you really focus your strength and conditioning on that, and that's what you need, I think it's a little bit more motivating rather than, why am I doing this exercise? And it doesn't need to be complicated. Bodyweight exercise, majority of my athletes haven't been to a gym this year and they do bodyweight exercise. You can use your body weight. 20 press-ups, pull-ups, single leg squats. You do 10 single leg squats holding a small child in front of you, and it's really, really hard work. So I think people overthink it as well, and it doesn't. And just like you say, you put the kettle on and you do 10 calf raises. Done.
What are you doing your teeth?
Yeah.
Why are you doing your teeth? Stand on one leg. I made my husband do that. It drives him mad. I just want to go to bed. On my leg, please.
I can see why you said right at the beginning that we could have a whole episode on every one of these topics, and it might be that we'll come back to this, but there's some great points there, and thank you so much. So the next question we've got, and we'll start with you, Dave, on this one. This is from William Taylor, and he wants to know tips on downhill running technique and efficiency would be great to hear. Would love to hear things to practice and incorporate into training runs to avoid mashing the legs too early on race day.
Another entire podcast coming up. So I said when I was thinking about this afternoon, what I was going to say, I was thinking about me and you, John, doing the training for the Lakeland 100, working on our downhill running technique. And it takes me about, what year was that? 2012?
Yeah.
1964.
When I was a lad. So I wanted to, obviously we all know that we have problems towards the tail end of an ultra with our quads. But I wanted to back that up. So I actually I did a bit of research this afternoon. So there's a study in 2019. And what this study found was that the greatest slowdown, if you're comparing flat running, uphill time and downhill time, the greatest differential in slowdown in ultramarathons is on the downhill towards the end of a race. And I'm sure vast majority of people out there are training to get themselves along the flat and up the hill as fast as they can, or as efficiently as they can, and maybe ignore what's going to happen towards the end of the race when you're coming downhill. And I remember I kept saying this to you, John, that if you're having to walk downhill at the end of the race, you are wasting gravity. That is the line. You've got to use gravity. It's like a cardinal sin having to walk downhill at the end towards the end of a race. So the problem is that the sort of physical load, the forces when you're running downhill are so big on your muscles. Okay, yes, they're big muscles and they can take them to a degree, but it's absolutely brutal what your quads in particular are taking because of these eccentric contractions. So your muscle is kind of trying to contract and breaking, but it's being pulled at the same time, and that's why you suffer with this kind of muscle soreness after. So the issue with this is, and people probably thinking, right, if I go out and do loads and loads of downhill running, I'm going to get really good at this. No, not quite, because if you do loads of downhill running, you're going to be so beaten up all of the time that you're actually not going to be able to do quality training over a period of time. So you go out and you do a really hard downhill training session, then you can pretty much write off the training effect for the next 4 days. So you've got to be thinking long term all the time. So a few points to think about while you're actually doing some downhill. So these are almost like, I'm put PE teacher's hat on for a moment. So like the coaching points, just something to think about while you're trying to do this. So high cadence. So a lot of us, when we start running downhill, we tend to try and bound a little bit more. And when you bound, what that does, you're overstriding slightly, you're hitting the ground with greater force, and it's a greater braking force, so it's even more brutal on your legs. So if you can kind of think pitter patter with a leg strike, or a foot strike, sorry, to the ground, you're going to reduce your ground contact time. You're going to keep a high cadence. So therefore the forces on your body are a lot less. So basically you're trying to preserve that failure point and make it as far down the race as you possibly can. If it's possible, obviously the very, very steep stuff, this isn't necessarily possible, but you want to try and avoid landing with a heavy heel thud when you're running downhill. You want to try and land a little bit more forefoot. And the way to do that is another point, is to kind of just move your body weight, your center of gravity forward a little bit. You're never going to quite run perpendicular to the hill, but if you can get forward a little bit, the more you lean back, the more braking force you've got and the higher general forces. So try and lean forward a bit. And what you're trying to do is get your feet to land so that there's a minimal fraction of a second before they're already moving backwards. You want your feet moving backwards as they hit the ground, rather than hit the ground, brake, move my body weight over them, and then start the whole process again. So if you can think about your body position, try and lean forward a little bit. And here's a really good one. This is one that I think about a lot when I'm running downhill, is try and run as quietly as you can. And by doing that, you're automatically going pitter-patter, 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 rather than thud, 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 thud. You're not trying to beat the hill into submission. You're trying to go down it as efficiently as you can. And the final thing, and you can only do this, will come on to my, perhaps, I know the question talked about what can I do in training, so that's the kind of second part, but something you can practice in training but makes a big difference is start to look ahead a little bit more on the trail. So a lot of people, when particularly if they're less confident running downhill, just look at their feet, which then you can't pick a nice line through the terrain. So what you need to try and do is become more trustworthy of your brain, that actually it will hold the information 10, 15 meters ahead of you. So you've then got a better body position as you're actually running. I don't know whether at that point, any other kind of coaching points, Eddie, that you might add in on that?
Well, that is very interesting. There's a study. I need to dig it out because I tell people about it all the time. But if you have a strong core, it releases something in your brain that allows your body to move faster downhill, because your body is telling your brain, I am supported, you can go for it. Obviously, living in the mountains, I've had a ton of practice of this, and I moved here 5 years ago, and I was so shocked my first race when I turned up and went, whoop, whoop, here I go, and I show these Europeans how to run. And we ran uphill, and then we went downhill, and I was like, whoa, wait, what, guys, where are you going? Oh my God, they run down. So if you can learn to ski, it's a winner, because it's exactly that. And like I run with a lot of my mates out here, and the downhill is always the bit when I'm turning around going, guys, come on. What are you doing? We're pretty much, we can jog uphill in the same pace. The downhill, I'm like, come on. So the little tips I always do is get in that ready position. Think of a tennis player. Think of anybody about to do a sport. You prep your body. I'm ready. If I trip, I'm balanced. I'm ready to go. And another good tip, try this out training, is I like to sing. I think if you sing a good song as you go downhill, you relax, you stop thinking about what your feet are doing and what's going next and are you going to fall off that cliff. You pick a good tune and off you go, and you sing as you go downhill. And I guarantee, I'd like some video evidence, guarantee you'll run better. It's all about relaxing, and it's all about not thinking, oh my God, I'm going to fall. It's all about, I am in control. I'm two, like Dave said, I think in skiing now, I'm 2 turns ahead and I know what's coming, and I've got a strong core and I can embrace that downhill. And just practice. I mean, it is literally, there's no secret to it. It is just practice. And
That's
running off the path. If you've got a downhill, don't stay on the path. Go off the path and practice in a little bit of technical stuff, so that you're not, so if you're throwing something in a race, you got it. But it is, I mean, it's such a skill, and I'm still not as good as I'd like to be.
It's interesting because John knows my 2 songs. I have 2 songs that I sing in technical terrain, on downhills and so on, that make me smooth. One of them I'm very happy to reveal, and the other one I'm very sad to reveal. But Oasis, Roll With It. So I sing that, rolling down the hill. Exactly. And the other one, 80s throwback, Sade, Smooth Operator. So that's what I sing when I run downhill. That's it.
I love it.
Be smooth. So going with the confidence thing, Eddie. So one of my training tips was that initially, if you're very inexperienced, find a hill locally. It doesn't have to be a long hill. It can be a 20-second run downhill. That's all it needs. And obviously on a trail would be ideal. But run the same hill downhill lots and lots of times so you know the hill, because that then takes a little bit that fear, that unknown quantity away. So you become more confident.
Absolutely. Your local hills, you don't even think about them. You run back down, and then when you find something technical that you've not done before, and you're like, whoop, stand back. That's such a good tip. I love that. Just practice.
And a lot of my athletes, particularly when they're doing training for races like that, I've included a lot of climbing, like Leighton 100, UTMB, that kind of thing. So not to do with the downhill bit, or it's only partly, but we have our hiking reps. And most people do their running reps and blah, blah, blah. Well, okay, hang on a minute, but race specificity, you're actually going to hike most of the hills.
95%.
So we do hard hiking reps with a pack on and then turn around and run back down. And obviously you're repeating the same hill again there. So that's a great way of just building up the confidence of being able to do that. Nothing beats going out for a long run with lots of hills in it. Don't get me wrong, but not everybody's able to do that. I realise that. Something else to consider, maybe that I've got other things written down, but I am conscious of the time. Another thing to consider is that in most ultra races, certainly in the UK and on the continent in Europe, you're going to have to run with a pack on. And running downhill without a pack compared to running downhill with a pack is almost a different sport. Start off without the pack to get the confidence, but then at some point you've got to take that step, because you've got to know how your body balances with a pack, because it's different to how it balances without a pack. So just something to be aware of as you go forward.
And don't blast that first hill down.
No,
Whatever you do, I mean, control. Run the last hill.
Well, thank you to both of you for some great advice there. And I'm sure, William, hopefully that will answer some of your questions and everybody else that's listening. Okay, let's move on to our next question. And this is for you, Eddie. We'll start with you. This is from Adrian Abbots. And he wants to know, any advice on how to activate my lazy hamstrings would be greatly received, along with Edwina's honest opinion on the best way to incorporate cycling into your training plan. And I'm glad he put this in. He said, no need to cover Swift again, though.
Okay, so another really great topic, another thing we've talked about lots, but activating your backside, basically, your back muscles. There's that posterior chain that you want to get working before you start running. And I hate to mention it, but as we get older, we have to sort of remind them how to work a bit, how to work in the right order and what they need to do. And I like to do just a little bit of activation before each one, just like we talked about in the beginning of the podcast, not making it a big deal. Right now I'm going to work on my hamstrings, but just by doing some little exercises, either before you run, the best time to do them is before you run, because you're waking up those muscles, and then you're going to run and it's going to remind them how to work. But even on like an easy day, recovery day, or in part of your strength and conditioning plan, there are some really simple exercises you can do which help wakes up all those muscles down your, so we're talking sort of glutes, your hamstrings, your lower back, to remind it how to work when you're running, because this is the origin of a lot of injuries, but then they come in your lower limbs. But it's actually often, most people when they go to the physio go, your glutes aren't firing. So some really simple exercise, a simple shoulder bridge. If you're not sure, I can't demonstrate because I'm shoved in my bedroom while the kids go to bed, but just Google shoulder bridge and have a look at that exercise. That's really easy. You can do it anywhere. Have a little go with a really slow shoulder bridge, a really slow lift, a hold, drop it down. To make it a little bit harder, you can lift into a shoulder bridge. You can try a little bit of marching, keeping that core nice and strong, really pushing those glutes so that they're supporting your legs. So you should almost feel like your legs are able to lift off the ground because your glutes are really pushing up. You can try lifting one leg and extending it to about 45 degrees and then lifting it back, dropping it down. And you'll feel, if you've got a bit of a lazy glute or a lazy hamstring, because your pelvis will drop, have a little go at those exercises before you run. If you've got a band or an old inner tube from a bike or anything stretchier belt, put it over your thighs and try a little bit of clams. So lying on your side with your legs bent, knees facing forward, and just open up your knees, feel a bit of restriction with the band about 6 or 7 times on each side, and that's really making that glute work. Then off you go, some really simple exercise, off you go for and see if you feel any different, and I bet you do. So you can do those sort of little exercises. There's loads of ways to make them harder, there's ways to make them easier, but those are kind of simple ones that you won't forget. Have a go at putting those into your run and see if it makes it a little bit better when you're starting your run, and see if you get those hamstrings and those glutes working together as well. Kettlebell swings are also really good. You don't need a really heavy kettlebell swing, but just doing a half kettlebell swing wakes up those glutes, wakes up those hamstrings, and they all have to work. They can't cheat. Otherwise you'd be lopsided. fitting cycling into a training plan, or fitting any cross training into a training plan, I think is absolute key to consistency. If you want to be a runner forever and ever and ever, I would encourage everybody to find another activity that they love doing as much, if perhaps not as much, because we all know running is the best, but find another activity that you enjoy doing that is, it doesn't have to be totally different to running, but if it can be non-weight bearing, then that's brilliant. You can incorporate the cross training into your plan any way that you see fit. So the most important thing to remember when you're cross training is that I think runners just want to run. You know, if it's not miles, it doesn't count. But your heart doesn't know if it's running or cycling or swimming, but your legs do. And by adding in a little bit of cross training, I would say, depends on the time of year. Right now, when you're in a sort of maybe a kind of easy phase, now is the best time to try something new, to try some cross training, so you can actually get fit enough to ride your bike, to be able to use it either as a recovery tool or to use it as a session. So this time of year, like I said about the strength and condition, it's a great time to try out a different thing without it impacting on your race. So you can use cross training either as like instead of a recovery run. That's brilliant. Save your legs, and I guarantee the next day you'll feel like a better runner because you didn't do that recovery run and you did some cycling or some swimming, or even the very underestimated but much loved hiking. Working on your power hike, maybe with a bit of a pack on, or just going for a nice easy stroll, is better than pounding your legs a little bit more. So I'm a great cross training. I love cross training. I have no problem switching out a run to do some cycling, to do some swimming, to do some hiking. It's all good training, and it's all just bows to our tools in our toolbox, I think, and working different muscles. Dave's nodding his head. Yeah, I agree.
I've been on my turbo trainer before this, just like you.
Oh, yes, Dave. Do you do lots of cross training, Dave?
Yeah, I go on my bike at least twice a week, but I'm a bit of a fair weather cyclist and I live in Cumbria, so I do a lot in the garage.
I think with cycling as well, is if you use it as a turbo, you can really monitor your effort as well. So it truly can be recovery, because you can really monitor your heart rate, and the same, you can really do a good workout on it as well. So great, huge advantages of using a turbo, especially in the winter. It's horrible.
Okay, so Adrian, I hope that answers your question. And well done, Eddie, for not mentioning the S word there. So
Z, it's Z, John. It's Z, it's not S. Get in with the kids, man.
Excellent. Okay, our next question is for Dave. You can start with this one. And this is from Scott Barry. And he's interested to know Dave's opinion of emerging technology in training. I am thinking in particular of training with power using Stride and monitoring recovery by measuring heart rate variability with devices such as Whoop. So there's two devices I've never heard of. So I don't know what you have.
Okay, I'm assuming this is a 3-hour podcast, isn't it? Yeah. Okay, good. Right, I've got my feet in both camps here, and through my running career, it has kind of fluctuated where I've gone with this. I must admit, I like a good gizmo. I actually quite enjoy data. As you know, John, I'm a bit of a spreadsheet fiend myself. I do love all that kind of stuff. And it does tell me a lot. And as a coach, the vast majority of my athletes, I coach remotely. So having data is actually really important to go alongside the kind of written feedback. So I've got that side of me, and also I do use training use technology myself in training, but only at certain times, which I'll kind of come on to in a minute. But then there's also the problem that we have with trail running, and particularly when we get into mountain trail running, the variables that are going on under us and around us are so vast. There's so many different variables that are going to have impact on the kind of metrics that we're using from the technology, that you can't kind of get a sort of a level playing field, literally. So I'm kind of torn between these two things. So if you think about when you're training, and I think particularly when you're racing, and it doesn't matter whether we're talking about power meters like Stride, or whether we're talking about heart rate, or whether we're talking about even like perceived rate of exertion from within yourself, your own intrinsic feedback. you've got all these things like, what is it, muddy underfoot? Is it rocky underfoot? Are you going uphill? Are you going downhill? Is it technical? Have you got pre-race nerves? Big impact on heart rate. Are you properly hydrated? Big impact on heart rate. Blah, 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 blah. There's all these things going on. And if you're going to use the technology, you've got to kind of add all those variables into it. And that makes it very difficult, particularly when you're on the fly in the middle of a race or in the middle of a training session. So my number one thing with my athletes, and I'm sure Eddie will back me up on this, and probably any coach in the country will back me up on this. The hardest sessions to get your athletes to do well are the recovery runs, zone 1, and your kind of aerobic base runs. And I don't want to generalize too much here, but men in groups running together, you can basically kiss that goodbye if it's supposed to be a recovery run, because we're just going to speed up too much and run too hard. So I personally use technology with my athletes. Number one priority is to make sure that they're doing recovery runs slow enough, whether that's by pace if they're on even terrain, whether that's by heart rate if they're not on even terrain. None of my athletes use stride. I don't use it myself, but I do know about it. So you could use your power readings to keep you slow enough to make it recovery. My first heart rate monitor was from John Kinniston. And I'd been doing this however many, like decade ago or whatever it was. And I've been doing my recovery runs for decades. I've been doing this game for 40 years. And I got a heart rate monitor. I thought, well, okay, I roughly worked out what my recovery heart rate run should be. So I ran it to that. And it was like a, I don't know, 4-mile run. And it took me like something like 8 minutes slower than I would normally do. So I've been doing my recovery runs way too fast for like 30 years. So we can use our technology in that way. And I think that is probably the most important way of using them. It has got a place, I think, when you're trying to do kind of lactate threshold, speed endurance, steady state runs. I think a lot of athletes, when they start, as soon as it becomes a rep, some kind of interval training, they try and do it all at kind of 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10 effort. Whereas in fact, some of those we don't want to push that hard because the length of the session is too long, and we want to kind of maintain the correct effort throughout. So there is a place for it there. When it comes to racing, maybe this is my own personal experience, but I find that my pre-race nerves and so on, I can basically ignore what my heart rate's doing for the first like 2 hours. I don't even settle in. I'm still too excited. And so I find that I kind of ignore all of that, and I've become much more, I'm going to run as I feel. And you're going to go through bad patches in races, and you could go through a bad patch in the first 2 hours of a race, and all those metrics are going to be out and you feel rubbish. But if you can just get through it, then you are going to get through it and you'll be back in the game. And if you start worrying about those metrics all the time, it's just going to add more and more stress onto what you're doing. So I think we've got to be careful as to how we use technology. Don't get me wrong, I love coming back from a VO2 max section and looking what kind of life is left in the old dog. And looking at that, what can I get my heart rate up? I enjoy doing that after, but when I'm doing the session, I'm not necessarily following it to that nth degree. With regard to the power meters, you're going to get potentially a better consistent reading, because some of those variables we've talked about have slightly less impact with a power reading. However, if you're going to run a race or do a long training run running to power, it's very different to cycling because of the kind of the pounding and the variations in the underfoot conditions that we get with trail running. So essentially, you're going to have to come up with a kind of power target for that. A power target for running uphill, a power target for hiking uphill, a power target for running downhill on easy terrain, a power target for running downhill on technical terrain, a power target for running flat on technical terrain, and so on and so on. And it becomes a little bit more, isn't that just another one more thing to worry about when you've got plenty of other things to worry about? So yes, there's certainly a place for that. And you've just got to take into account all those other variables. It's not as easy as using the power meter to train for a road marathon. This is a different ball game completely. The same goes with the Whoop, which is an app or sort of program that tracks. It's largely used for things like recovery and when are you going to be at your best to do your best training, and have you recovered properly from the previous session. A lot of watches do this, but I think Whoop takes it to an nth degree. I believe it's a subscription thing as well, so that you might want to consider that. And my takeaway thought, having looked at this, was it's all very well a piece of technology telling you that you're now recovered really well from that, you should do this, or you haven't yet recovered from that and therefore you should only do this. But you've got to fit that around your lifestyle. And if that day happens to be the day when you've been given the go ahead, right, okay, you can have the morning and go out running, then that's the morning you've got to go out and do a long run. So again, the technology is maybe there to help you, but it's going to be quite difficult fitting it around your lifestyle, which is perhaps for most of us, that's going to be less. You can play around with it less than you can if you're not working. Then you can do a lot more with it.
Great.
Does that?
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm trying to keep that. I've got notes here. I've got serious notes here, but I'm trying to keep that short and sweet.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful, and I'm sure Scott, that's answered some of his questions.
What does Eddie think about the getting your athletes to run slow enough?
Yeah, so exactly. I totally agree. So, and personally, the heart rate, I mean, ultra running is all about learning to run with feel. And right from the onset, I'm all about, how do you feel? Do you feel recovered? Do you feel tired? Is this an effort you can maintain? You don't, because like you said in a race, I never wear my heart rate monitor strap in a race. One, it chaffs like hell. And two, I don't want to look at my heart rate because I know it's going to be through the roof to start off with. So it's no reflection on anything. And I don't want to be looking at my watch, and I very rarely look at my watch. So yeah, wearing the heart rate for recovery. And it's something I'm really focusing on at the moment. And I'm so bad at it that I'm really trying to keep that strict heart rate, and I'm wearing it. And when I'm running with mates, I'm going slower. Or it takes a knock to the ego, doesn't it? To go, I'm going slower because this is too fast for me. And you're already going quite slow for my recovery pace. But it's all about thinking about the next step. Tomorrow, I want to be running easy. The next day, I really want to do those sessions. And it's those key sessions that are going to make you faster. So I think heart rate's place as an ultra runner is really, truly in recovery. And it's so useful for cross training as well, because you can then, when you're cross training, you're not thinking, is this any good? Is this helping my running? You can relate your heart rates across the sport. I don't really need it for hard efforts personally, because I can't even look at my watch if I'm doing a hard effort. But like you, I like to look at it afterwards, and it's so useful for us for the feedback as coaches as well. But the other stuff, don't have a clue, couldn't care less. Too much stuff, too much information, don't have time, got 3 kids.
Well, I had to look up and see I knew what stride was, but I had to have a good bit of research this afternoon to start exactly how it works. And that's not something I'm going to encourage any of my athletes to work with. But
if anyone's used it and it's worked and they like it, dis-moi, tell me all about it.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And thanks so much for tonight. It's been brilliant. There's lots and lots of great advice there, and people can take away. And we'll have you back on, Dave, and we'll get some future ones as well. I think maybe next time.
Send an invoice for this one, Dave, because that was you.
I think maybe next time we need to limit the amount of questions we have, because I'm just conscious that there's just so much that you both can share on each of these questions. But thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And we wish you a happy Christmas, Dave. And
yes, happy Christmas.
We'll
catch up in the new year.
It'll be into the wonderful, awesome racing in 2021 when we next do this.
Okay, so we hope you enjoyed that interview, and I picked up loads of really good stuff. And the blog post this week that I put out on the Cheer Charge website was about recovery runs, and I thought that was one of the things that I took away from it. Again, just the importance of making sure that your recovery runs are recovery runs rather than ending up running the sort of similar pace. Yep.
That's
So-
interesting, isn't it? And that's exactly my focus for this winter, is to make sure that all that volume that we have to do as endurance athletes is at that right recovery pace, and it's not at training pace. But it's hard to do. It's really hard to do.
Yeah. I think it
Working
takes a lot
on
of
it.
discipline, doesn't it? A lot of these things. I was thinking that before when you were talking about, that you like to do everything sort of full on. It takes real discipline. And that top tip I gave a few weeks ago when we were talking about finishing well, to finish well in an ultra, you need to start comfortably, in my opinion, and to do that takes a lot of discipline. You've got to allow people to run away from you early on, knowing that.
And I think that's why cross training is so good as a recovery too, because there's no pace, there's no worry about your running. I've only done this many miles, because it's something completely different. And so it almost, you can sort of take your ego, not the microphone, sorry. You can take your ego away from sort of the running, because you can almost tell yourself, it's not my sport. So this is, to me, it's like, this is more fun. And then when you go back to running, it's almost like refreshed and you're ready and you can focus on that bit. It's all about playing tricks with your brain, basically, isn't it? Because us as ultra runners, we're wired to push ourselves. If we don't finish a hard session, smashing the protein shake, we don't feel that we've done it right. I'm laughing because before we started recording, I was drinking my protein shake, pretending I was building big muscles. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I can try.
So have you got anything on this weekend, the coming week?
Well, my darn kids are going skiing, because they're opening up the piste for the kids that are in ski club. So I've got to take them there and wave them off. I will hopefully get a bit more ski touring in, so the skin's back on the skis and a bit more up and down the piste. And we're going to buy our Christmas tree, John.
Oh.
I'm quite a late Christmas decorator. Are you? I like to sort of leave just a few. I mean, I'd like to wait another week, but the kids are actually getting angry with me now that all their mates have got Christmas trees. Have you got your Christmas tree up yet?
Well, I must admit, this year we haven't bought a real tree. We normally have a real tree when everyone comes to the house, but because we're not going to be in the house over Christmas this year, we decided not to. But we've got a lovely little tree, a wooden one that we bought in Indonesia when we visited Emma the last time. So and we have a nice nativity set which always goes out, and we got some lights up. So we got bits, but we haven't got a big Christmas tree this year.
Not the big tree.
Yeah.
We've got our little nativity scene set up, and I've taken baby Jesus away, and my Evie, my littlest, is distraught, and I keep saying, you can't have baby Jesus. We call it the crèche in French. We can't have baby Jesus in the crèche yet because he's not been born. And she's like, oh, can we get it every morning? She's like, is he going to go in now? Can he go in now?
Lovely.
I love it. Yeah, so next week I'll try and be festive in the background.
Okay. And just to mention next week's episode, which will be the last one before Christmas, I will put out an episode on Christmas Day and New Year's Day, but they're going to be recordings of some of the live interviews that I've done rather than us chatting in the same way. But there will be an episode out. So we thought for next week we would do a Christmas one. And we've invited Tim Taylor, the director of Cheer Charge, our sponsors.
Are you going to wear a suit, John? Are you going to wear a suit? Should we dress up?
I'll have a Christmas hat on maybe. But we thought we'd just have a reflection of the year, and we'll make it as positive as possible, because we know it's been a tough year, but we're going to pick out some highlights from our work, our family, our running, and be able to share those. So that will be our episode next week.
Are you doing any running, any more power hour sessions planned?
Well, I'm going to do, and I've run on the Braes tomorrow, up on about normal, and then I'll do the Monday session at the club. And then I'm going to have a couple of easy runs, because next Saturday is going to be my time trial. I'm going to go round my course again to see if I've improved. So I'm not nervous, but I'm actually looking forward to it. I'm going to treat it. I'm going to do a proper warm up, and I'm going to really hammer it round and see if I can, how much quicker I can go from 5 or 6 weeks ago when I did it. So I'm quite looking forward to that.
Yes, me too. Yeah. Can you have a GoPro and sort of film it as you go? Or
no, that'll slow me down.
Right, too right. Now that's silly business.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you very much for listening to episode 18. I'm John Kinniston.
I'm Eddie Sutton, and let's run to the hills.